Good evening and welcome to our City Council meeting of January 21st, 2014. And I think it's kind of been my prerogative over the years as chair. I always kind of start out with a little comment, or mayor now. And I think without a doubt we have to start out this meeting in a serious concern about drought. And I hope CCWD steps up very soon and takes some positive action, because this is not looking good at all for all of us here on the coastside and all of California. And so I think we have to start it out that way. So I welcome everyone and ask for a roll call, please.
Here.
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 Here, thank you. And may I ask our visiting troops here, Boy Scouts, to come forward to help lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Thank you, and I know you're wanting a little more information on agenda items, and I'll summarize them as best as I can to help you out. But if you grab an agenda too, you can kind of look through it a little bit, and you've already done that. Moms and dads know a little help there. So at this time is a very special evening for our proclamations and presentations. So the first one, which is quite an honor, and we as a city would like to also recognize them. But Mr. Eddie Andrini has received an amazing plaque here, and if I may quickly just read it to you. Eddie Andrini, the International Council of Air Show Foundation is proud to induct Eddie Andrini into the Air Show Hall of Fame on December 5th, 2013, in recognition of his contributions as a performer, a showman, and an air show industry advocate. So that is an amazing plaque, Eddie. Thank you for sharing that tonight. And I will give you something here very soon. But, you know, I think when you have these opportunities to see a friend come forward, and you got to talk about him a little bit. And so it's ironic, but he was born a few years before myself on our ranch in La Honda, San Gregorio area, so that was kind of unique. And one thing about the Andrini family, they have been givers to the coastside all their lives. It's been instilled in them with the father, even though Eddie would sneak out and get a plane instead of be out in the fields. But history has it that he was checking on everybody's other crops to see what everybody was growing out there, and then he'd go back and tell his dad, you know. So, but the thing you have to remember most about this individual and his families is that anybody was ever in need, and I think that's what community is all about. They are stepping up and helping people. And I can remember neighbors' tractors breaking down back in the 50s. Who's there but Eddie and his brother? And they continue to do that, and they're kind of stealth, even though they fly over loud and buzz you once in a while around town. But they really are a stealth family that just gives so back to all of us here in the community. So thank you for letting me share that moment. But I have to conclude before I give my proclamation. I was thinking about it out in the field today. It's not about flying upside down, you know, and Eddie is famous for that. And as I stated a minute ago, it's really, he's a straight up guy. And one thing about Eddie, he will tell you how he feels. And I definitely respect that. And I would say hopefully 50, 60% of the time it's positive, but there's times he'll let you know. And that's what's great about Eddie. He is a straight up guy, but he flies upside down. So there's not many people that way in this life. So it's a very special time for me to present him and give him back this gorgeous plaque here. So Mr. Andrini and I know we have a lot going on there tonight, but I just want everyone to know, and Andrini and Eddie himself knowing that City of Half Moon Bay proclamation honoring Eddie Andrini for his recent inductee into the Hall of Fame. And this has been going on for 60 plus years, I believe, not just a few years. So it's very special. And Eddie, I'll let you say a few words, but
Thank you.
As mayor, I can
Thank
cut
you.
you
I
off.
want to thank you, John, for everything and all the good work.
Thank you.
Well, I think I've got to tell you a little bit of this story because it goes way back, but a lot of people in town never probably even knew about it. That I've had a passion for flying for many years. And so what happened, I'll just go through real quick. When I first started flying, and I bought an airplane because my father made us work. One thing we learned, he never bought us nothing, but every time we worked, he paid us. So I always had money to do stuff. So even when I bought my first car before I had a driver's license, I showed it to him. It's up at Grinelli's, up at La Piazza. That's where the Grinelli Cooks was. And he says, oh, it looks very nice. And I thought maybe he was going to buy it for me. He said, no, you have money. If you like it, buy it. But you got to keep it. So he was always like that. But I learned early on that if you worked and you had $1, you could buy stuff. And even in high school, when I became a senior, I bought an airplane with a couple other people, and I was the only one that retained it and learned how to fly and everything. So the passion went on, and I really loved old military planes in the World War II stuff, and so I always looked up to that. And lo and behold, that I learned how to fly, and I got better and better and better. And then I bought a military trainer, and I learned how to fly in that. And I learned aerobatics in it, and that led to one thing to another. And this one guy that taught me the basic stuff was a crop duster, and he ended up doing air shows. And after that, boy, I wanted to do that. And pretty soon, I got good enough to do that. And I was called by a person on 1962 to do my first air show up in Pope Valley. And I think I got like $150 for it. It was just amazing that I was able to go up there and do this air show with all these people that I idolized. Anyhow, as time went on, I got better and better and called more upon to do shows. And I started doing more and more shows all over the place, and I always felt too that it's still a problem that people should get paid for it because it's kind of a unique professional thing to learn, and it's kind of a risky business thing. So, and anyhow, so I was a privateer, it was called in the industry, because I never had a sponsor. I had a couple small sponsors. But anyhow, as time went on, I did more and more shows. And I would go on a weekend, and sometimes I would have to leave on Friday, Thursday or Friday. And the only person that knew about this was my wife, Linda, and maybe one or two of my people that in my company. I didn't want to tell them too much of where I was going because I didn't want them to know that I was gone. So I would do the show and come back. And so it progressed, and pretty soon, I got better and better at it. And I got known as one of probably the best people in that type of airplane to do air shows and performances in. So I was fortunate enough to go overseas and fly, and I really cherish that very much. And anyhow, and I'd get to go, we went 3 times overseas, and we would spend a month over there flying. So it was great. So as time goes on, I kind of look upon things like this that you could become maybe in the Hall of Fame. But it was, when this came about this year, it was really a surprise, and I really cherished it very much. And so this is something that's been an aside that most of the people in Half Moon Bay haven't even seen, but I've done it, and my wife and my family's been through it. They've seen it all. So anyhow, I want to thank everybody for sharing this with me, and we hope to do a little bit more too, a few more years. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Eddie.
Mamma mia.
John, can I say something?
Yes, so council, make some brief comments. Thank you, George.
Eddie, can you come back up to the podium, please?
We don't get many times to kind of work Eddie over, so it gives us a little opportunity. Now's our turn.
I think the second time is okay.
No, I just want to personally thank you and congratulate you, because I think, as you indicated, a lot of people don't know how skilled you are as an airplane pilot. And if any of you have seen his planes, it's just remarkable what he has. And I just want to say, this is a personal comment, how handsome you look tonight. I've never seen you look so dasher.
I only do this when I go flying, so I'm flying tonight. And let me tell you something, I'm still one of the only people in the size of airplane that I fly that goes upside down and cuts a ribbon, and it's just great.
We can't leave you there all night, Eddie. We'd love to. You're a true treasure, and I think it's a treasure, but also thank you for preserving history on the equipment that you've accumulated over the years. You have preserved history for younger generations to share and see someday, so thank you, Eddie.
Thank you. And you know, I brought something, Half Moon Bay. It's too bad I didn't share this early on, because I thought it was just something that I was doing, and I'd bore people with it. So this is what it is.
Marina, quickly.
Just quickly, congratulations, but also it goes without saying, you have been very philanthropic, your family, to schools and any fundraising, and your family, your sons and daughter-in-laws have taken over and done a lot of fundraising for all types of community services here. So thank you for that. And Boy Scouts who are here, if you want to interview someone, this is a guy to meet. What an incredible life he has. And maybe he can meet you in his hangar and you can see the rest of his planes too.
Well, anytime anyone wants to come out, and I appreciate what you people are doing. I get frustrated sometimes, but that's just the way it is.
Thank you, Eddie. All right. Well deserved. Next will be our HIP housing presentation, please.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, and city staff. My name is Laura Finucci. I'm the Associate Director of HIP Housing. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk with you a few minutes tonight about HIP Housing's programs, which you've been so generously funding for the last year. And I'm also here tonight. You should have before you one of HIP Housing's 2014 calendars. And they're being distributed to you right now. This is the contest that we have every year for students kindergarten through 5th grade to draw a picture of their home and then to write a statement about what their home means to them. And we received nearly 300 entries from students this year in the San Mateo Foster City School District and in San Bruno. And we have the difficult task of choosing the 12 winners. And January's winner is a 5th grader from San Mateo. And she says, a home contains shelter, peace, safety, and love. Most importantly, it has my family where my heart rests under their embrace. So it really is a great contest for kids to start learning about the importance of having a home. And that's what HIP Housing provides here in San Mateo County to nearly 1,400 residents a year through our 3 programs, our home sharing program, self-sufficiency program for families with children, and through the properties that we own and manage throughout the county. We recently had an article in the Half Moon Bay Review about our home sharing program, about a senior who has a mobile home here who found a housemate through our organization. This is a program that matches people who have housing here in the county with people looking for a place to live. And about 60% of our home providers, those that have the place to share, are seniors. They're looking for ways to remain independent in their home and to help supplement their income, being that they're on fixed incomes. We interview nearly 2,200 people a year for this program, and last year we had over 700 people who are home sharing through the program. We know that in this county it's extremely difficult for people to find affordable housing. The average rents of a 1-bedroom apartment are over $2,000 a month. We know that the subsidized waiting lists are closed, and that other affordable housing waiting lists are incredibly long, and that the vacancy rates are very low here in the county. So programs like the home sharing program are readily available for people to start applying for and hopefully find a match with somebody who is looking for a home sharing arrangement. We have a very thorough interview process where we interview all of our clients. We provide them with resources on how they can interview each other and check references. We also fill out a written living together agreement with all of our clients who are living together, and we follow up with all of our clients who are matched every 3 months for the duration of their match. So it's a very comprehensive program that gives people an opportunity to have an affordable housing option here in our county. We know that rents are rising. We hear every single day how people are receiving astronomical rent increases. We had a client, a single parent in Burlingame, whose landlord was very amenable and didn't really raise her rent very often. So every other year he would raise her rent about $20 every other year. This year she received a $200 rent increase. And that's just, all of a sudden, that's a rent increase that a lot of people obviously cannot handle and cannot manage. And now she's looking to move out of that unit into a shared housing situation. The other programs that we offer, we have a self-sufficiency program for families with children. We work with between 70 and 80 families a year, single parent and two-parent families, where the parent is in school and doing job training, and we help to support their housing for a year to 5 years. We have some families that are living in one of our 3 group share properties, where they can stay up to 2 years. They pay $50 a month per room. We have other families that are in a 1-year housing scholarship program where the agency pays their rent for the first 6 months at 60% and the last 6 months at 30%. And then we have a collaboration with the county's Moving to Work program where we have some of our clients that are in our 5-year housing subsidy program where they're paying about 30% of their income on rent. So we have 70 to 80 families that are in this program every year. We provide them with case management. We provide them with life skills workshops so they can learn more about budgeting, parenting skills, nutrition, financial literacy, and we have collaborations with other nonprofit partners to help support the family's ability to become self-sufficient. And lastly, HIP Housing owns and manages over 240 units of low-income housing here in San Mateo County. We own and manage 14 units, 14 buildings, and we also manage some properties for the cities of San Mateo, Foster City, and San Carlos, providing housing to about 450 low-income individuals and families throughout the county. So each year, our 3 programs provide housing to over 1,400 individuals, and we're very appreciative of the support that you provided our organization. And I want to thank you again for your time this evening. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about our agency and our programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your fine work. And we appreciate it. And hopefully we can continue to support HIP Housing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next on our presentations will be, it's kind of ironic it follows HIP Housing, but it is the Homeless Outreach Team presentation, and our former interim chief, Mr. Lee Violet, now with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office and many other capacities. So welcome. Nice seeing you, Lee.
Mr. Mayor and members of the Half Moon Bay City Council, my name is Lee Violet. I'm on contract with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office and at the direction of Lieutenant Lisa Williams in charge of Coastside Patrol. Coastside Patrol Bureau, she asked if I would attend the Homeless Outreach Team committee meetings, steering committee meetings, which I started back in August of 2013. My comments are going to be very brief, and in a moment I'll introduce the person that's going to be talking about the Homeless Outreach Team and the outreach caseworker. I just want to take a moment and acknowledge a few people that have helped bring homeless resources that exist on the peninsula side of Skyline, and not too many resources over here, but they've now brought these resources over here with the Homeless Outreach Team actually operating in the city of Half Moon Bay, Pacifica, and some of the unincorporated areas. So if I could start, it would be Rex Andrea from the Emergency Response Coordinator, San Mateo County Human Services Agency. He did a lot of heavy lifting behind the scenes of this. Victoria Colligan, Edgewood Center for Children and Families. Eric DeBode, Catholic Worker House. Donald Estrada, El Centro de Libertad. Mary Taylor Fullerton, San Mateo County Behavioral Health and Rehabilitation Services. Wendy Goldberg, San Mateo County Human Services Center on Homelessness. Brian Greenberg, who I'll introduce in just a moment. Vice President in charge of programs and services of Envision Shelter Network. Bob Hutchinson, Envision Shelter Network. Connie Leva, Envision Shelter Network. Ali Niera, Coastside Hope. Nada para Alanda, San Mateo County Healthcare for Homeless and Farm Worker Program. Anita Reese, Pacifica Resource Center. Fatima Soares, Coastside Hope. Joe Spanheimer, Captain, Pacifica Police Department. Dr. Robert Stebbins, San Mateo County Healthcare for Homeless and Farm Worker Program. And like many of the people that were on this committee, their time was all volunteer. He was actually, if I could just have him, he doesn't want to be singled out, but I'm just going to ask him to stand up. He ran this committee, was the chairperson that kept us on track, asked the questions, kept things going, kept the momentum going, developed agendas, that type of thing. So I think he did a lot of the heavy lifting behind the scenes also. Mary Ann Wallace, San Mateo County Behavioral Health and Rehabilitation Services, and of course Lieutenant Lisa Williams, who's now been replaced by Lieutenant John Muncie, who's here this evening. Also tonight, we have Jerome Olimpiada. He's the newly hired Envision Shelter Network outreach caseworker, back here in the blue sweatshirt. So he's going to be actually doing the majority of the field work. So now I'd like to introduce Dr. Brian Greenberg, who will show you a little bit about the program and how it works.
Thank you. Welcome, Doctor.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, people, and staff. Thanks for having me. I'm Brian Greenberg with Envision Shelter Network. About 5 years ago, the police chief in the city of San Mateo, Susan Mannheimer, she called on the County of San Mateo and Envision Shelter Network. As you're probably aware, most of the cities, like Half Moon Bay, on the peninsula have a condensed downtown, and a half a dozen or 2 dozen homeless people can really change the whole climate of a downtown setting. And it tends to be a chronic population that hangs out for years, the population tends to have serious mental illness or substance abuse, other problems. Chief Mannheimer and the county and Envision Shelter Network put together the HOT program, which are homeless outreach teams, in which law enforcement, not the nonprofits, and not the county, but law enforcement put together a hot list. And the idea is that if you can get the 20% of the homeless population that generates the most merchant and residential police complaints and the most emergency room visits, if you can get that quarter or fifth or third of the population off the streets, you can not only dramatically improve their lives, but it can impact the whole community. So we now have hot teams in South San Francisco and East Palo Alto and Redwood City and City of San Mateo, and we're starting one in Half Moon Bay and another one in Pacifica. I'm not going to talk too long. The idea is, again, for law enforcement to create the list of the homeless population that generates the most law enforcement complaints and emergency room visits, and for us to work intensively with that population to get them off the street. Those of you who have been in South San Francisco, you know that they have a very concentrated downtown in the Grand Avenue area, City of San Mateo, 2nd and 3rd, 4th Avenue corridor, Redwood City and the theater district down there, and on and on. So it tends to be a similar issue in all the cities. Obviously, you know, we also have outreach teams in downtown San Jose where there's a very entrenched and large homeless population. That's kind of a different issue, where you have homeless encampments with 50, 60, and 120 people, and many of these really entrenched populations. It's really a different situation in the smaller cities, both east of the coastal range and in coastal communities like Pescadero and Half Moon Bay and Pacifica. I don't want to talk for too much. I do have Mr. Olimpiada here, who has a background in law enforcement. We're glad to recruit him for our HOT team. I also want to thank Dr. Stebbins, who's volunteered. It's kind of it takes a village approach where we work with healthcare providers and housing providers and other nonprofits, county housing, because it takes a lot of work to get people that have been on the streets for many years off the streets. And with that, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. I know you got a full agenda tonight.
Thank you. We'll take a quick question.
Yes, I think I'm very glad what you all are doing. I think it's a wonderful mission to try and help out. And I understand that direction to the 20% that are the big issues. I would love to have you all come back and report back to us. I'm very interested in how much of a population we have, what kind of issues there are, just a periodic recap of what you're all seeing and then what things are working.
Let me speak to that real quickly. The one-day homeless count.
You must turn on your mic and respond quickly, please.
The one-day homeless count, it's done every 2 years, counted about 120 unsheltered homeless people. Our goal, we have about, we'll have about a dozen and a half or 3 dozen people on the list somewhere in there, is to get a quarter of the people off the street in the first year and a half of the people off the street on that list every year thereafter. And we've been successful in other communities in doing that. And as someone leaves the list, we ask law enforcement to backfill that with another homeless person.
Thank you. Any other questions of this presentation?
I'm just glad that you're here to help, because there are people like that here that I think could benefit from the help that you guys are going to provide.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And just from a personal level, I think Lieutenant Muncie's in the room. We've never met yet. I'm sorry I missed the meeting. I wasn't well, so hopefully we'll connect soon together. So thank you, Lieutenant, for welcome aboard and looking forward to working with you and all your fine individuals with the Sheriff's Office. Okay, that concludes that. We'll move on to mayor's announcements and community activities. So quickly, I believe this week on the 23rd, there will be a ribbon cutting for Quest Diagnostics and Mid-Peninsula Healthcare here on Main Street on Thursday evening. I'm not sure on the call for the Mavericks, big waves, but it could be, and maybe Lieutenant Muncie or someone could keep us informed so the public will know if it's a go or not on the big waves coming in supposedly on Friday. And then just quickly, Sunday I had the opportunity to meet with the world-class giant pumpkin growers in Napa, and these were all the number 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5 world-class pumpkin guys. And we had a seed exchange, which was great. But I did come away with some pretty good seeds, but I have to say that. They're very kind and generous. But the gist of the story is that they could not believe the world record was broken at Usigi Farms in Gilroy, and there was 0 press there. And they just are amazed at the press that comes to Half Moon Bay and the recognition. And they love our way off, even though the guy went to Gilroy for the big bucks. But that's okay. I got 3 seeds out of them. So it's a very special day up there with the giant pumpkin guys. And let me tell you, the Napa Sonoma group are just world-class producers. So those are my activities. And I believe one more, that the San Francisco Airport will be having an open house for Terminal 3 on Saturday the 25th for the public in the afternoon. And as Councilmember Patrick stated, it's an amazing new facility there that's really state-of-the-art for travelers. Eddie takes his own, so he doesn't have to go through all that stuff. But anyway, so that's a pretty exciting time. And then on October 30th, the Chamber of Commerce will be recognized and have their annual awards meeting out at Oceana in Princeton. And that's my community activities and announcement. I have met with a number of individuals, and it looks like we'll be meeting with more once we all get healthy. As you can see, we're all kind of working as much as we can here, and I'm sure all of you too have been through all of this. So between 5 of us, hopefully there's 1 or 2 good voices will be left this evening. So that concludes my comments there. So we will go to City Attorney and report out of January 7th, I believe, closed session.
Yes, that's right. Thank you, Mayor Miller, members of the City Council. There were 2 items on the closed session agenda, which was a special meeting held on January 7th. The first involved real property negotiations, and the subject of that item was 2 parcels, 225 South Cabrillo Highway and 2450 South Cabrillo Highway. The second item on the afternoon's closed session agenda was 1 item of considering initiation of litigation. There was no reportable action taken in either of those items. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. This time we'll go to City Council reports. So I know Councilmember Patridge always has a packet full, so we'll start with you, ma'am.
It's not too bad this time. I went to the TA meeting, and Dave Capania, the mayor of Daly City, and I were sworn in as re-elected members of that board. We did hear 3 reports, one on Caltrains, one on the Christmas train, and then the quarterly finance report. We got an interesting report from Sherman from the legislative report saying that they are still fighting for federal funding for transportation. So hopefully, that will come about, and that we also emphasize that if there was ways to try and get funding for highway repair, because of the new adoption of complete streets and all that, has been really tearing the small cities as far as funding. Attended the Crab Chapino, was a lot of fun, and I must say the mayor was a highlight of the evening. Met with Robert regarding the bridge, and attended the airport roundtable viewing of the new boarding area of Terminal 3. And if you have a chance, I would really encourage you to go. It's open to the public in the afternoon, and they have done some very creative things in that area. And you know how you go to the airport and they never have enough plugs to put your computers or charge your phones and all that? They have an area and they have a plug by each chair. And it's amazing, and they have really nice chairs. They do have an area for the children to play. It's an interactive spot. And they also had really nice food areas there. And they have, in the sitting area, they even have lamps. So when I walked in there, I said, it reminds me of sitting in your living room. And it has that kind of a feel. So I would really highly encourage people to go over and see it. And that's my meetings.
Councilman Kowalczyk.
Thank you. And if I may, just a comment for the scouts here today. What you're hearing, you're taking notes on what we're doing. What you're hearing us talk about is that we serve on the city council, but we also serve on a lot of other committees and participate in a lot of other meetings for our community. And this is just our reporting out to the community about those things. Just a couple things for me to report. One, working actively with the Sewer Authority Midcoast, SAM, on the recruitment of a new permanent general manager. We have an interim manager in place who's doing a fine job, and we're actively pursuing a full-time GM. We conducted interviews and background checks and have not made a decision on how to move forward, but we will be meeting again a week from yesterday to see if there's a decision in that process. Also participated in the lovely study session about the CIP, the Capital Improvement Plan, just before this meeting, and also met with our project manager about the bridge project. And those are all my meetings.
Thank you, Councilmember Alfano.
December 18th, Sam held an employee luncheon for us down in Mullins. It was very nice to get to meet the employees. And again, I agree with Rick. The interim GM we have, Vivian, is doing an excellent job. It was a very nice luncheon. The same afternoon, we had a LAVCO meeting. And if you don't know what that is, you're going to have to Google it. And the issue on there was Granada Sanitary wanting to convert to a community service district where they could do parks and recreation. The vote was 6-1. I was the one vote against, mainly because of timing. And then on January 6th, as Rick's saying, we had interviews with some potential full-time general managers for SAM. That was very interesting. And then on the 9th, attended the Government Affairs Council with the local Chamber of Commerce, and we're getting very good turnout. We have all the supervisors and the representatives. Either they come or they send their person, and it's interesting to hear about things that are happening that could affect our community, a lot of things involving the Coastal Commission. And then on January 15th, we had another LAFCO meeting, and we did a vote to approve Granada going forward, and it was 7-0. I voted yes on it. They're going to go to the June ballot, which I think a few of us felt is a little soon, but, wish them the best of luck on that. And we're going to probably put together a subcommittee in the meantime to try and see if we can't convince Montera and Granada to consolidate and eliminate one of the agencies we have on the coast, which would be a step in the right direction. And then potentially, if they were to become a community service district, they could provide Parks and Rec from the north of Half Moon Bay all the way to Devil's Slide. So I think that would be a step in the right direction. That was it.
Vice Mayor Fraser?
I was in conversation with the San Mateo County Public Health Department, as we've heard different media reports and on the internet that we've had raised levels of radionuclides on our beaches. The state and as well as the county are saying that these are normal elevated levels of radiation. They're naturally occurring. But nonetheless, they did come down and they had taken new sand samples, and the California Department of Public Health is analyzing them right now. They do say that the volume of water in the Pacific Ocean has a significant diluting effect on the radionuclides that are present, so they don't anticipate that concentration will increase and don't see that there's going to be any fallout from Fukushima. But they have collected and analyzed the samples, and they'll be posting them on their website shortly, I believe by the end of the month, the new results of that because of the raised concerns.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And moving on, our guest scouts here, I've got a lot of paperwork. As you can see, we're shuffling here, so thank you, Mayor Kowalczyk, for kind of backing me up, and I think that's what normally past mayors do, and then they just second the motion and go home. But not really, but
No paper.
that's right. He's got the fancy computer, but we'll get that someday here. I think our city clerk's pushing for that for Farmer John here, but I still do it my way. So at this time, we will go back to our city manager. And again, as we said, we're all kind of fighting these throat things the last few weeks. So we'll do the best we can for you. City manager, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So you all know this is my favorite part of the agenda, and we get to talk about some organizational excellence. It's our opportunity to let you know some of the things that are going on behind the scenes that take a lot of staff time or effort, but which you may not see on a normal day-to-day basis here at the council meeting. So this evening, I'm happy to have our planning manager, Bruce Ambo, with us, and he has a great update for you on all of the planning process improvements that have been made in just the past few months. And with that, I will turn it over to Bruce.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. As Laura indicated, I'm happy to report some highlights that we've made to some planning process improvements. Siobhan's going to drive through the presentation with me, but one of the first things we did is we updated and created new planning applications to make these things a little bit more easier to use. These applications are now available on the website. You can fill them out on the application. A lot of the times, folks don't know really what they need, but it's like, just go ahead and write down what it is you'd like to do, and we can help you figure out what kind of permits you need, as in terms of the other way around. So we've made this seem a little bit more logical, and when we went through this, there was a lot of information on there that really wasn't applicable to what they were asking for. So now we've minimized this and tried to make it seem a little bit easier to read, kind of decoded the language so that it wasn't so officious and more of in a conversational tone, so that folks could figure out just how to figure out the application and kind of not write it in such a regulatory format. So then the other thing we've done is a lot of folks that just come in just want to find out information on their one piece of property. So there's no reason to wade through 5 pounds of code if you're just interested in your one piece of property. So what we've done is distilled the 5 pounds of code and put them on one sheet of paper, so that the majority of the regulations are just on these summary sheets. We placed a big emphasis on trying to use graphics and illustrations to make it seem a little bit easier to understand. And then again, we tried to de-emphasize the code language. A lot of those things we just rephrased in a more conversational tone. And then I think one of the other things that most folks that encounter, the planning processes, they're afraid of uncertainty. So what we've done here is we've taken some of the uncertainty out of this by a good degree. And we've structured planning cycles for approval. This way we can guarantee when an application is deemed complete, when we'll actually be ready for a planning commission several months in advance. In addition to that, we've shortened up our timeframes. Normally it's 30 days, we're put ourselves under 20 days. And then it helps folks understand what some of our timelines are. So in this process of these cycles, it's a transparent process, but we tell folks, well, this is when we need to put the notification in the paper. This is when we need to send out notices. This is when we need to have the reports done for our internal review. So it helps folks understand the kinds of process that we need to go through in order to help them move their projects along in a timely way. So this is just a snapshot at some of the things we're working on right now. There's more to come, but these are the three things that we thought would be most helpful, because the majority of our caseload is about 80% residential, and that's what most folks need assistance with. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Councilmember Kowalczyk?
Yep, so thank you for this. All great stuff, and I definitely appreciate it. And in our previous meeting, in our study session, we talked about some external communications, and I think this type of thing would also be really helpful to share with the community, particularly since you said 80% of this is really applicable to individuals, which is nice. And a quick question regarding the adding predictability to cycle times, which is probably the question I hear in my ear the most. Are we at this point yet tracking individual cycle times?
Absolutely. Yes, we are. And so, and the key to these cycle times is as soon as they're deemed complete, that puts it all, then we can tell them we'll set the hearing date, and you know what that is with certainty once the application's deemed complete. So we backed it out so that we have the notification and newspaper ads and so on and so forth. But we've tightened it up so that we can get all of that out and tell them if you can get in here, and that's a realistic assessment.
Great traction. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
All I can say is bravo. The public has screamed for this. We have screamed for this for years. This seems so simple, yet we hadn't been able to get this done. To think that when people can actually go in and have a form that's much more simpler, people trying to add on to their home or just build a single-family home, they didn't know where to look. And now that you've reversed the processes, what exactly do you want to do? And you do the technical part to help them find it is absolutely huge. It's been one of the more frustrating pieces that we hear from the public has been planning. So just these few small changes will make a huge difference in people's lives, and it will save time both at the counter, but time and frustration for people as well. I think this is fabulous. Thank you, and please continue.
Thank you. Council member?
Ditto.
We like that.
Ditto for me, too. And I've been here longer than Marina, so it's really ditto, ditto, ditto.
You've been here longer than God, I think, sometimes. That's okay. We try to put a little humor into very serious items that we discuss. So at this time, we will move on to city manager's updates, and of all times having a rough voice, you have a large comment there.
I do have several for this evening, more than normal. And I will start with staff introductions. The one, I think we've had a couple of conflicts. So let me start with Deputy City Clerk Melissa Thurman, if you could just wave. She's over there, I can't see her. Melissa has come to us from the city of San Bernardino, and for 5 years she was also a deputy city clerk serving in that community. Her primary duties are going to include record management, board and commission support, including packets and minutes, and general support to the clerk's office. I understand that she also has 2 dogs and that she bakes, but yet we're still waiting to see evidence of that. So we look forward to hearing that some more. I also would like to introduce our new Administrative Services Project Manager, Michelle Pollard. I think Michelle had to step out. No, she's here. Okay, I can't see anybody. Can you wave, please? Thank you. Would have started with Michelle if I'd known she was able to still be here. So Michelle comes to us from Monterey County. So both of these two folks have moved here for this position in Half Moon Bay, which is very exciting. All the great new talent that we're bringing to the community. Michelle has a BA in her undergraduate degrees in criminal justice, and she also has an MPA, a Master's in Public Administration. She'll be working on a variety of different things from Measure J to emergency preparedness and economic development and many special city manager projects. And lastly, I do know that Lieutenant John Muncie had to step out. Has he been able to come back in? No. So I saw him get paged out, and I thought, uh-oh. So Lieutenant Muncie, you actually previously met at another council meeting with just a quick introduction, but I did want to let you know that he has formally transitioned, and his duties have formally begun in Half Moon Bay. He attended local schools, including Hatch Elementary and Cunha Middle School, and he has been with the Sheriff's Office actually for 20 years now. Most recently, he was commander of the San Mateo County Narcotics Task Force, which works with all of the chiefs in the county. So he is well-positioned and ready to serve in Half Moon Bay. He, too, is bringing not only a bachelor's degree, which in this case is in psychology, but also a master's in public administration. So welcome to all three folks, and we look forward to working with you. Next, I would like to talk about the Sheriff's Office Citizens Academy. We have started another academy locally here, and it's the first academy in quite a number of years. We had about a dozen people who are going to be here, and I think this was actually the first English-speaking academy ever. So it's been a few years, and I think this was the first English-speaking one. There's another one that's going to be starting at Hatch on January 22nd, so if folks are interested, please sign up for that. These are multi-week programs that give you a better insight and introduction into some of the services the Sheriff's Office provides and how you can help yourself and your community.
So Laura, just briefly, it's not just for students, it is for adults to attend?
Yes, these are actually targeted for adults. The next item is about our general plan update. So the City of Half Moon Bay is creating a new local coastal program and is updating our general plan. So these are going to be the guiding land use documents for the city going forward, and we really need community involvement. There are three ways that you can help. First of all, the council has already created and has recently appointed the General Plan Advisory Committee, commonly referred to as GPAC. We also are hoping that people come to attend these meetings. Their first meeting is scheduled for Thursday, January the 30th at 7 o'clock, and I believe that's going to be it's going to be right here in this room. And next, the main reason for this item tonight is to talk about the launch of the new website. So the website is Plan HMB, so it's PLAM-HMB, it stands for Half Moon Bay, obviously, and that is .org. And if you go to the website, if you have questions like, can anyone build in that field behind me? Or what might happen to the downtown in the future? What might be allowed to be built there? You can go there and get your questions answered at that website. Also, if you hate the idea of building a 12-story indoor ski ramp, by the way, we're not proposing a 12-story indoor ski ramp, but if that were proposed and you didn't like that idea and you wanted to comment on it, you can also go to this website and give your feedback. If you want to stay updated and know when the meetings are happening so you can come and voice your questions and concerns and comments in person, you can sign up to be on the project email list and receive all the announcements. So again, I hope everyone does start using it. It's a very interactive site, and again, that's planhmb.org. The next item is to let the community know the good news that the trail extension that went along Highway 1 on the west side of Highway 1 to Wavecrest is open for pedestrian and bicycle use. There's still a little tiny bit of work that's going to continue, but the trail is open for use. So that was really good news. And then lastly, I just wanted to repeat the information that we tried to send out earlier, that we have received another grant. And this grant is for that work that we're doing in our local coastal program. The grant was for $75,000 from the California Coastal Commission. It is the second of two grants that we've received. The first one was for $70,000 from the Ocean Protection Council. So that means our grant funding is about $145,000 for this work on the general plan, which we do think may cost up to about $1 million or so. So we are looking forward to updating all of those different documents and are glad to have some additional grant funding, particularly to look at climate change and sea level rise and how that impacts the community. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that report and update there. As you can see, there's a lot of things going on. The next item is public forum, and if I just might explain to our audience that this is a very important part of an agenda. We take it very seriously, but I will tell you, and I mentioned earlier in our workshop, we do not exchange dialogues with you. We take it very seriously. There's two reasons. One is legal, and the other is a personal belief of mine on public comments. So we will hear it, and then I will have the prerogative to refer your seriousness to and your comments to staff to respond. And I know I've already hopefully responded to one or two of you that already are in the room here tonight. So this time we have past member, council member Jim Grady. Come forward, please. Welcome. Good seeing you, Jim. Three minutes are running, Jim.
I'll keep it brief.
Not for you.
Mr. Mayor, council members, Jim Grady, 149 Miramontes, Half Moon Bay. A couple of months ago, John, I spoke with you about maintenance on the coastal trail, and things continue to deteriorate out there. This sign was hanging upside down. I thought I'd bring it in, but it's been hanging upside down for about 6 months. And then in the wind, when it was blowing last week, finally just blew down. So I'll leave it for your staff. Between Kelly and the Seymour Bridge, there are approximately a dozen poles without signs, probably at least 10. And I'm talking about poles that are at the end of the cul-de-sacs that face the bluff tops, and I'm talking about poles along the coastal trail itself. And we should either get the signs back up the way we want them, if they're really required, or get the poles out. It really isn't the way we want to present ourselves as a city. I mean, people come here, we put in a really nice parking lot a couple of years ago up there, and we should have, if the signage is absolutely required, we should have the signs. If the signs aren't required, we should get the poles taken down. So that's one thing. The other one is the Seymour Bridge. It's part of the coastal trail. I guess the only good news about the lack of rain this year is that there hasn't been any erosion up there. But that bridge is going to come down I'd say within the next year or two. And as you're thinking about bridges around town, I know that's a hot topic. But the one up at Seymour is one that the community worked hard to put in. It's part of the trail continuing on the south towards the Ritz. And if that gets taken out by a storm, and eventually it's going to be, I used to be able to walk across that on a telephone pole 20 years ago. That needs some attention. But if the council could please direct staff to pay attention to the trail. Last thing on the trail is towards the middle of the fourth quarter of last year, maintenance staff started to put in posts for the fencing that separates the city property from the private property. Well, half the posts that were put in are now gone because they were never cemented into the ground and they were just there. And all the connecting cross pieces were never attached. So I don't mean to come and present you with a bunch of potential problems or issues, but it's something that needs attention because that is really the area where people come and visit. And we need to maintain it as a city. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jim, for your awareness and concern, and I will work with staff to look at addressing some of these issues. That coastal fog will cause havoc on metal signs, let me tell you. But we haven't had much fog either, so that's unusual. So next will be Pat Owens, please come forward.
Yeah. Hello, Mayor, City Council members. Yeah, I live on, sorry, the throat. Live on Ventura Street. Wanted to direct your attention, staff's attention to the poor state of repairs on our street. We'd like to ask the city to come in and do either basic repairs or preferably repave the street. It's been a long time. It's really threadbare, and we'd appreciate your consideration on the matter. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. We did have an earlier discussion about that, and I will be trying to meet with the homeowners soon to try to explain this very complex situation on street repair. So myself and staff will be working on that. Next 3 weeks, I'm on the road for conferences, but we'll work on that. So Andy Wyatt, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I too live on Ventura Street, and I'm here because I'm concerned of the dilapidated conditions of the street. As we know, on the weekends, we get inundated with people from over the hill, and we are starting to notice a lot more foot traffic. The street that is adjacent to us, we had a situation, about 6-7 months ago where there was a pedestrian walking on the street and happened to step in one of those holes and twisted her ankle. I hope that the City Council can take our problem on the street serious before we have a situation like that on the street and the city is looking at some kind of a lawsuit. But I thank you very much, and I hope that you take our concern serious. Thank you.
As I stated earlier, we take it very serious, and I'll be working with staff to hopefully get out and try to explain this complex situation on our street repairing maintenance. So we'll move on from there, and at this time, there's no other public comments at the public forum, so we will go to the agenda. And I do have a couple of cards here. If there's anyone else wishing to speak, now would be the time to turn in the cards for the next agenda items. So we'll move on to the consent calendars, item 1 through 8, please, from City Council.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion we accept the consent calendar items 1 through 8.
Second.
It's been moved and second for consent calendars 1 through 8, and I'll do a roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, so ordered, and thank you for those individuals that attended tonight for the consent items. It's always very important that they're in the audience, and I appreciate that very much. Even though it's on the consent, it is very serious for all of us to review and look at. So we will move on to item 9, I believe, correct? And at this time, I will ask, this is kind of the way we'll handle it tonight on the next many of items ahead of us. First, we'll have a staff report, and this might be interesting for our scouts. And 2, we'll open the public hearing, and 3, I will close the public hearing, and 4, we'll do council questions and comments, and 5, it'll be a vote. And we will open the same process for all these next few items ahead, I believe. So thank you. So at this time, we will look at the staff reports for item 9, please.
So thank you, Mayor. This evening, we do have 5 public hearings. That is more than we normally have at one time. So we've asked all the different staff members who will be presenting to come up, and we will take them in order that they're listed on the agenda, and each staff member will introduce themselves and the item before them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Scott Phillips, Associate Planner here at the City of Half Moon Bay. And tonight I'm presenting on the appeal of the Planning Commission decision requiring the relocation of a entry monument sign for a 2-story retail building at the corner of Highway 92 and Main Street. And a little background on the project. On July 17th, 2013, Ron Stefanik filed an application for a sign program. The sign program was required through a condition of approval for the entitlements that were approved by the Planning Commission for the building that is currently under construction at the subject property. Then on October 22nd, the Planning Commission approved the sign program with certain conditions of approval, one of them being requiring the relocation of the monument sign adjacent to parking stall number 1. And then on October 29th, the applicant filed a timely appeal of the Planning Commission decision to relocate the monument sign back to the, requesting the original location. And here is a vicinity map of the subject property. Moving on, the, the photograph here shows the original location that was proposed for the monument sign, which is 4 feet from the edge of the sidewalk. The applicant has removed the green mesh shown in this photograph to expose the mock-up. They put a mock-up of the monument sign for viewing. And then the next slide shows the location, the general vicinity of the, where the condition of approval is requiring the relocation of the monument sign, just for comparison. And then as far as the recommendation motion, we recommend upholding the appeal and supporting the applicant's wishes to allow the monument sign to be constructed in the location as shown on the submitted plans. If you have any questions at all, I'd be happy to answer them.
Council?
If I may, so I don't know if it's questions. I'm going to say stuff, and if there's a question in there, answer it. So as I'm looking at the two.
I think maybe we should wait for your comments after the public hearing.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, we'll
Apologize.
save it, though.
I'll say stuff later.
Please. So at this time, I will open the public hearing on this agenda item, and we do have the applicant with a speaker card before us, so if he would come forward, please, and make his comments. And
Mr.
state
Mayor,
your name and address, please.
Mr. Mayor, council members, my name is Ron Stefanik, and I live at 238 Vallejo Street in El Granada. I believe the staff report fairly accurately outlines our position on the monument sign, and if you've read the staff report, I don't want to reiterate everything that Scott's mentioned in there, so I'm here to answer questions should you have any.
Thank you. Is there any questions of the applicant? There are 2 signs in that location already, I believe. Is that correct? One on North Main Street and one on north side of 92.
There is. There's one existing sign for Pilosito Square. At both entrances of Pilosito Square, we propose one sign at the corner of 92 and Main Street that's been at that same location throughout all of our planning process. And we would prefer to keep it there because we prefer that location because our address is 200 San Mateo Road and the sign is closer to San Mateo Road there. We feel that the sign is fairly low profile. It blends in with the building and the landscaping and is more visible to the public. As the staff report points out, we feel the other location hinders the view of traffic, where we honestly don't feel that this sign does hinder the view of traffic, and it's compatible with the building.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant? If not, I will close the public hearing, and we will move on to council's questions and comments. Councilmember Kowalczyk, I'm sure it's fresh in your mind.
Now I'm going to say stuff. So thank you for the added perspective on this. So I have a bigger question. I'm going to circle back with my planning commissioner because I want to understand that I see the position of the sign that as proposed, general comments, as originally proposed as being with A, legal, and B, within a reasonable consideration for the owner of the business to place their sign, and I would want, if I had a business, to be able to place my sign, and that makes sense for my business, and I will inquire with my planning director is some more of the background behind, guiding business owners about where they. It strikes me as influencing how somebody does business, right? So I'm just, all that to say, I'm in favor of the application.
Council member?
Yes, I got a chance to walk over and tour the site, and I have to say that where the applicant wants a sign on the corner of Main and 92, to me was the logical place for the sign. You can catch people coming down 92, turning onto Main Street, and they'll clearly see a description of what's there. So from my perspective, when I walked the site, it seemed a very logical place to have the sign. And the nice thing is there's plenty of area to locate the sign, not obstruct views or anything of that nature. So I'm in agreement with placing it in where the applicant wants it.
Vice Mayor?
I don't see a problem with what the applicant wants to do. I looked at the area too, and from the new information of the pictures, I don't see why there's a problem.
Councilmember Patridge?
I agree with everybody's comments, but when you look at the sign where the planning commissioners proposed it, it really, if you are a bad driver, and some people are, I'm not saying that I am, it does create, by the first parking stall, a safety issue for me. So I logically, when you look at where it is being located, it is in a better spot. And as it's been pointed out, it's not on Main Street, it is on Cemetery Road. So I clearly agree with the applicant that if the sign is not being a hindrance and it wants to identify on the Cemetery Road, that the sign should go there. I'm very thankful that they did not put it in the other location where Pilacita Square is at the first location when you first come off 92, because then it would have created a really jam up there. So I think this is probably, out of the 3 locations, probably the best one.
Thank you. Yeah, my comments is it looks like it's pretty well streamlined compared to the Pilacita Square signs. It is a lot smaller, so they have shown concern there for the location and also for the size of it. And it doesn't look like it's obstructing any walkways or anything, and it's almost behind the state highway signal light pole. So they do have a little obstruction there, but at this time I would ask for a motion if the council so wishes.
I move to, okay, sorry. I'm not used to being a council member. I got to get back used to this. I move to uphold the appeal and approve the sign program allowing the monument sign to be constructed in the location as shown on the submitted plans.
Second.
There's been a motion and second. Any further discussion? If not, roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, so ordered, 5-0. This time we will move on to the next item on the agenda, and I'll keep working on my paperwork here. I believe it's item 9. 10. Sorry about that. As I say, there's a lot there. So, again, we will go back to the procedure, and we have a staff presentation, and staff is getting in place there.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Carol Hamilton, Senior Planner with the Planning Department. Also in the audience this evening is Jason Weiner of the SWCA, who is the project biologist and is available to answer any questions you may have. The item before you this evening is the appeal of a coastal development permit approved by the Planning Commission for the routine maintenance of citywide ditches. The appeal was filed by James Benjamin, and it has been several years since the city has conducted regular maintenance of any of its drainage ditches. This has resulted in overgrown vegetation, sedimentation, and an accumulation of litter and debris that has contributed to localized flooding and the general deterioration of our drainage facilities. This coastal development permit provides for a resumption of routine maintenance at specific drainages. The maintenance activities will include vegetation control, which consists primarily of mowing. In some locations, mowing may be done by goats where that is appropriate. If the Kehoe and Roosevelt drainages are removed from the project, the trimming and removal of shrubs and trees will be very minimal as part of this project. Other maintenance activities will include removal of sediment to promote positive drainage, repair or replacement of culverts and other stormwater facilities, and bank stabilization. The coastal development permit approved by the Planning Commission included 15 drainage locations. Staff is now recommending that the council remove the Kehoe and Roosevelt drainages from the current coastal development permit, as requested by Mr. Benjamin. This will allow the city to deal with those two drainages separately so that they do not hold up the rest of the maintenance project. All of the 13 drainages that staff is recommending for inclusion in the CDP are existing stormwater facilities. Most are roadside ditches. Contrary to Mr. Benjamin's assertion, this project does not introduce a new flood control use. It proposes to maintain existing stormwater facilities with fairly modest maintenance activities. Staff has reviewed the additional comments submitted by Mr. Benjamin this afternoon and determined that the issues he raises have been addressed already in the written responses provided in your packet. This project has been carefully designed with very extensive mitigation to ensure that it does not degrade sensitive habitat and to ensure that it conforms to all of the standards of the local coastal program. Staff is confident that the project is consistent with the LCP and that it will not result in significant environmental impact. Staff recommends that the City Council deny the appeal, adopt the mitigated negative declaration as complete and in conformance with CEQA, and approve the coastal development permit for 13 drainages, eliminating Kehoe and Roosevelt, in conformance with the findings and conditions included in attachment 1 of the staff report. This concludes staff report.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'll open the public hearing. The public hearing is now open. Excuse me for my voice here. We do have a number of cards, and the first one we will call forward would be Paulette, please. I can come forward. And I believe the next two are family members, so you're welcome to come up together or whatever you would like to do, and I will share the time with both of you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor
I'm sorry, may I interrupt? There's a procedural issue, and our attorney would like to recommend that the appellant speak first.
Oh, I apologize, there's no card for the appellant. Okay, but he does have the privilege to speak first.
Well, he should fill out a card, but I assume Mr. Benjamin would like to address the council. I would recommend that he
I
be allowed
apologize.
to do so first, since he
Yes,
is the
the
appellant.
appellant is here. I apologize.
No apologies needed. James Benjamin, 400 Pilosita Avenue, Half Moon Bay. Good evening, members of the City Council and staff. Nice to see you. Happy New Year. I'm under no illusions that staff is persuaded by the arguments that I have laid out. We clearly have a difference of opinion with respect to the significance of the mitigations that are proposed. From my perspective, the mitigations are almost a blank check. They don't specify where the project will take place. There's a very large palette of tools that include rock line drainages that could be put anywhere within these drainages. They extend well into areas that are in open space all the way up to the coastal trail. And in the staff report, it says generally, normally, the work will take place further back. But there's still, if you sort of read past those detailed caveat words, there's really a carte blanche here. And I'm not the only person who feels that way. I'm grateful that the staff is addressing the Roosevelt and the Kehoe drainages because I think it's a good idea. That's very kind of you. However, I should point out that the Coastal Commission also had these concerns, and I would guess that that also may have weighed in their thinking about that. Unlike the other drainages, such as Pilarcitos Creek and Frenchman's Creek and Arroyo Leon and some of the other very large drainages in town, where removing them constituted not only removing them from the coastal development permit, but also from the initial study and mitigated negative declaration CEQA documents. When staff removed the Kehoe and the Roosevelt drainages, they left them in the initial study and mitigated negative declaration. This is troublesome for those of you who are in the planning process. As you know, an ISM&D that's been approved for work that hasn't taken place becomes a bit of a loose cannon, and it would be inconsistent with the local coastal program because there are provisions in it and the implementing ordinance that require complete CEQA conformance. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Coastal Commission have both expressed concerns about the adverse impact that the wide variety of tools that the city could use would have in this area. For that matter, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has expressed concerns about the impacts that this project could have on most of the drainages. And this isn't to be considered hearsay. This is in the October 14th letter that is buried somewhere in your packet, that very large packet. I would just say that I'm under no illusions that, my sense is you've looked at this document, and my feeling is you're leaning towards the staff position. I appreciate the chance to be heard. If you feel strongly that that's the right way to go, all I can do is respect your judgment. You can anticipate that I would appeal it to the Coastal Commission. But it is important to emphasize that I do not oppose a well-defined project in a location that needs to be addressed. If we want to resolve a specific flood problem in a specific area or address an erosion problem, such as the Seymour Bridge area that former council member Grady spoke about during oral communications, I have no objections to a specific coastal development permit and would welcome the chance to support something like that. The problem is the carte blanche nature of this project. I hope that it can be scoped down and scoped more specifically with the tools that will be used and the mitigation and monitoring that will make it truly a no-impact project, so that not only I, but also the Coastal Commission and the Fish and Wildlife Service would agree with the staff. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I'll move on to other speakers on this item. Excuse me, Paulette, please.
All right, I try to make sense of all the verbiage and try to come up with like what it is that people are really saying. And so I want to make sure that I really understand that this citywide drainage ditch is now, you're recommending take out Kehoe, take out Roosevelt. Of course, Kehoe is what I'm concerned about. I've only been talking about it at every single meeting, whether it's the Planning Commission or the City Council meetings. So far, I'm still not hearing a plan. Now, the city has been responsible for creating this mess called the Kehoe Ditch, and I have not heard a plan as to what it is you intend to do. There was some hope with the citywide drainage that at least maybe some minimal maintenance would be done on the ditch as it is. We know it's not viable where it is right now, but overnight, I know you're not going to create a new ditch overnight. So in the meantime, we've got this overgrown mess with debris and everything else that's in there, and I'm not hearing anything about addressing it and what you're going to do. That's what I want to hear. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next two cards, whoever would like to come first, please. State your name and address, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Christine Valanis. I live at 403 Kehoe Avenue in Half Moon Bay, and I'm here as your neighbor. I'm also here as a citizen, but I'm here as your neighbor. A little over 2.5 years ago, my wife and I bought the house on Kehoe, and one of the things that we thought was really great about the house was the fact that we backed up to city property, and thought, wow, great, we're going to have a good neighbor back there. But as you know, sometimes you buy a new home and you go in and, you start cleaning out the closets and you start putting the paint on the walls and you start to realize the hole in the wall and the nick here or there, and such as with the ditch. As I, went out there to clear, hand tools only, some of the debris that's back there to, in my backyard, you start to notice things. And then as we've had conversation as neighbors, and I realized that the erosion is so bad that it's now within 2 to 3 feet of my fence in some areas where the ditch has caused erosion into my yard. There are 3 trees that have already fallen over due to the fact that the dirt around them has gone away. And I have a very, very, very tall, I can't even tell you how many feet tall it is, eucalyptus back there that if that falls could do some substantial damage to my yard. So I'm hoping that as a good neighbor that you guys will do the right thing and take care of that. I hope that you don't take it off a maintenance path, or if you're going to take it off of that you have a bigger project in mind to really deal with it, whether it's to move it or to shore it up or something. But as your neighbor, I'm concerned about your ditch encroaching onto my property with the potential of major damage. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you for your comments. Raina, would you like to come forward, please?
Hello, my name is Lori Ann Valanis, and I'm the proud co-owner of 403 Kehoe Avenue. And I just want for a moment for you to envision your own backyard. And imagine you have that 60-foot tall eucalyptus tree with shallow roots. It's perched on a ledge. And imagine a wind comes and knocks it over, how you would feel about that being in your backyard. Imagine not even being able to trim that tree because you have to have an environmental impact report before you can even do that. And that costs thousands of dollars, probably more than trimming the tree would cost. Imagine that your brick patio is caving in because the ground underneath it is eroding away into the ditch. Or imagine not even being able to use power tools because you can't trim your trees, you're too close to a protected habitat. Imagine this in your backyard. Imagine if you wanted to do solar energy on your home, but you're limited because the trees are shading and your roof, and so you can't trim them. So you're limited how much solar power you can put on your new home. Imagine your backyard is getting smaller and smaller year by year, inch by inch. And you wonder, what happened to my backyard? What happened to my land? We have a pretty small backyard. It's getting smaller every year. And imagine the downpour that's sure to come. I mean, we have dry skies now, but that downpour is sure to come that floods our streets, floods our creeks. It's going to flood our ditch, which means it's going to flood our yard. And imagine the dry conditions continuing. Imagine you're out on your power mower or somebody has a weed whacker in that field on the other side of the ditch. It's not going to take much for that to go up in flames. So I'm wondering if you're worried, because we are worried. We are worried about our homes. We're worried about our neighborhood. We're worried about our city. I'd like you to think about not so much how it affects the purse strings of Half Moon Bay to redirect this ditch or to do something to solve this problem in our neighborhood, but I want you to think about how it affects the people of Half Moon Bay. And the people of Half Moon Bay are the lifeblood of Half Moon Bay. I live in a neighborhood with a lot of very civic-minded people, and you have to think the power behind these people, what they can do for the good of Half Moon Bay. So if you do the right thing, it pays forward so that my neighbors will do the right thing, and we pay it forward, all for the benefit of Half Moon Bay. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Lauren. And I will tell you, there's not a day that goes by that I don't worry about our city of Half Moon Bay people. Trust me, and I think the rest of the council feels the same way. This is a very tricky situation, and I don't have, I do have one more card. I'm sorry, Margaret Harris. Thank you. Oh, do you have one coming also? All right. I don't have it here yet, but we'll get it for you. Pat Johnson? All right, yes, welcome.
So, my name is Margaret Harris, and I live at 421 Kehoe Avenue. I've lived here since over 30, I'm getting up to 35 years, and I've lived by the ditch. It's an interesting thing to look at. We see all sorts of kind of animals, and raccoons and cats, but my main concern is that since the annual or biannual or whatever maintenance plan that used to be in effect when I first moved here in the late 70s and the 80s, that fell away probably because it cost too much money. And so what has happened is that the ditch is absolutely full of all sorts of greenery and trees and weeds and broken logs. And the rain is going to come back. And I'm just really concerned about what's going to happen to the entire ditch when we get a biggie, when the rain comes back. So my question is, or my suggestion is that somehow or other the ditch be cleaned out and on a regular basis. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I will tell you, we work very hard to try to clean that ditch, but as I said, there's a number of issues that we will
Yes,
discuss.
I do know that because I was
Thank
there
you.
when
Thank
it was
you.
being cleaned.
Next, I'm sorry, Pat, I was looking at item 11. Patrick Johnson, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Thank you for taking the moment to listen. I've been part of this ditch committee for probably 10 years now. Naomi and Marina, you know that, and this is just old. It's getting really old. I'm the only last survivor. If you notice, these are all new neighbors. These are all new neighbors. I want to point that out. Franca has moved. Everybody has moved. They're frustrated. They're out. They're gone. We have new neighbors, new lives, new people. And guess what they're saying? The same thing 10 years ago. It hasn't changed. We're looking for you guys to help us. I don't know what to tell you. I'm really frustrated. As much frustrated as you guys are on your end, I'm really frustrated because they come to me and say, Pat, why can't you do this? I go to bed at 9, 10. I can't do these meetings. Margaret, I want to say thank you. She came tonight. She's been here for 35 years. She's one of maybe 10. And they just can't do it. So I'm going to speak on their behalf. Their patios are falling down. You've heard this before. The trees, the willow trees that are getting huge are falling over, and Jimmy has put that in his report. If you read it, it's in there. It's true. They get big, they fall over. It's on our property. We're worried about fence lines falling over. Some of the fence lines are already gone. The cyclone fences are gone. They fell down, they're done. They've been gone for 10, 15 years. This has not gone away. I know this lawsuit and all the things that we have to do for it, it's changed everything. It really has, even to the point where I'm reading what my original and Margaret's original, and I dug it all up and I presented it 10 years ago. The Casa del Mar map, what it said ditch and it said swale. And I went to Farmer John's father-in-law and I spent a nice 2 hours with him and it was a couple years ago, John, and you remember this. You weren't part of the discussion, but I was downstairs. He showed me maps. We talked. I've got the whole history. Then when we look at the new reports, if you look on page 109, it's labeled as B2, natural and modified intermittent drainage. And I can tell you, I've got original documentation. I have no problem submitting. If you guys want me to, I will. And and basically it says ditch and swale on it. So I'm seeing this, what do we got? What it was and what it is now is a whole different ballgame. And a lot of that has to do with evolution. It's evolved. And the evolution part has become based on the city's non-maintenance. So we have what it was, and what it is now is no man's land. We can't touch it. So we've got a major problem. The only thing I could think of on one real quick thought is filtering the water before it comes down by the Naomi Bridge and the trail right there, like a cyclone fence that has enough water where you can get water through it. You can at least trap a lot of that wood and have our maintenance guys right after a storm go in and pick it out. That would be one little quick step that wouldn't affect anything. That would keep some of the logs from coming down there and creating some flooding. Thank you.
Thank you. excuse me, continuing on the public forum, James Benjamin, please.
I'm sorry, that was the card that Mr. Benjamin filled out.
See, I'm trying to be
After the
too
fact.
generous to you, Mr. Benjamin. So I believe I finally caught up with my 10 cards there, so I will close the public hearing this time and bring it back to council to discuss this very, very important and serious item. And am I wrong up there, just on the 13, is it not 15 ditches? It's 13?
They're recommending taking 2 out, so it's 13.
Yeah,
They're approved.
I'm wrong.
Mr. Mayor, the recommendation is for 13 drainages.
Right, you can tell my wife I was wrong again tonight. So we will have further discussion. Vice Mayor, would you like to make some comments, please?
I'd be happy to. And to the neighbors who are here from Kehoe who have first spoken, thank you for coming here. I understand exactly what you're saying when you talk about 10 years. I've sat on this council for 10 years, and Patrick, I hope you have told these new neighbors the whole history of what's happened here. It is so unfortunate. And this is a thing that makes people across the country think that California is crazy. Because at the end of the day, this is a ditch. It's a ditch that needs cleaned. You dig out some garbage, you dig out some things. And it was cleaned, and it was cleaned and cleaned for years, like every other ditch here. But then it was stopped. And then we did a few years ago, clean it out. We went through every rule we thought we had, and you had one of your neighbors sue us. And he won through the courts. Our hands are so tied now, but it makes no sense, because right now, we are held hostage from cleaning all the ditches, and I will not hold the other neighborhoods hostage because one neighbor in your neighborhood has stopped and prevented Kehoe Ditch from being cleaned. Our hands are so tied on this legally, and it's ridiculous. It's a ditch that needs to be cleaned. You can have 10 biologists out there watching and make sure that nobody stands on a frog, pulls a weed or anything. You just clean it. But we cannot do this. You have a neighbor that wants a new stream meandering through his backyard and have it totally different. Because of the lawsuit against us, our hands are tied. So to say for years and years that the city has done nothing and messed this up, the city did not do this. The city has tried everything to clean this ditch in many different ways, and it cost us a few years ago $300,000. So now we have to listen to the Coastal Commission, and we have every agency involved. And I hate this because I do understand what you're going through, because it's your backyard. You want to be able to put a deck. You want to put a little house back there, a garage, whatever. But you can't do this, and now your fences are eroding. The stream is starting to erode. I get that. But we have tried all kinds of different ways to clean your little ditch in your backyard. But because of one neighbor, he has thrown all kinds of technical things into it that has made this huge monster of an issue. So we have to follow so many different agencies, but we cannot let the rest of Half Moon Bay suffer because of what one neighbor in your neighborhood has done to prevent the cleaning of your ditch. It's very difficult. We're going to have to wait through all kinds of legislative procedures before we can tackle your ditch. So when you say we don't have a plan, we had a plan for so many years and we worked on it. But we were sidelined and trapped because of one of your neighbors. You can disagree with me all you want. We have lived with this because the only thing we want to do is clean a ditch. That should be pretty simple. But it's one of the most impossible things because we live where we live in a California coastal zone. And as people think that is so crazy, why can't you clean a ditch? You can read the stacks of papers we all have here. It's a very frustrating situation. I absolutely agree with you. But our hands are tied at this moment because we have a set of procedures that we have to go through. So in order not to hold everyone else hostage in town, we've got to let those ditches get cleaned up. And we're going to have to go back and address yours. It's unfortunate, and I'm so sorry to see this happen.
Thank you.
I want to read something, and I had it approved by the attorney so that I don't get in trouble. And I totally agree with what Marina says. Tonight, when we got to the council meeting, we were handed 2 more attachments to the appeal of the Kehoe Ditch. And let me tell you, I've been on this council since 1985, when we used to clean the ditches, and then we were stopped from cleaning the ditches. The last time we went to clean the ditches, what happened was one of the workers had an electric cutter. So that was the thing that started the whole thing. They said we could clean it manually. Well, one guy went in there with one electrical thing by accident. It wasn't that he did it. He figured since it was a small saw, it would be okay. So I want you to listen to what I'm reading to, because this is frustrating for me, because I totally believe in people's rights and people's property rights. I have appeared before the Coastal Commission many times fighting for people's rights and for their rights to build. So listen to what I had sent out, and I want you to listen to the facts. Just a minute, I'm not really good with my phone. Oops. On December 3rd, we had an afternoon meeting with representatives of the Coastal Commission, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Natural Marine Fisheries Service, Army Corps, and California Fish Wildlife. At that meeting, we were informed that those agencies had met with Mr. Benjamin earlier that day to hear his concerns about the proposed maintenance activities in Kehoe Ditch. At that time, Coastal Commission staff indicated that they had reviewed the proposed maintenance program and were comfortable with most of it. But given the litany of issues Mr. Benjamin had raised in his appeal to the Planning Commission, which he apparently copied Coastal staff on, it made it difficult for them to make a finding no substantial issue if Kehoe and Roosevelt are included in the project. Without those features, Commission staff said they felt that a finding of no substantial issue could be made. Even if the Commission were to find substantial issue, it doesn't mean what was proposed for Kehoe and Roosevelt was in any way inappropriate or inconsistent with the Coastal Act or LCP. It just means that it will take longer to process, may require additional studies or analysis, and of course will be more expensive to resolve. So while approval of the staff recommendation will unfortunately mean that no maintenance will be done to Kehoe and Roosevelt ditches for at least another winter, maybe more, who knows, it will enable the project to move forward for the other ditches. A CDP for maintenance of Kehoe and Roosevelt could still be processed as a separate permit. So this is what staff has recommended, and this is what I think we need to do. I do not, as Marina says, I don't want the other ditches to get in the same kind of situation that we're in with Kehoe and Roosevelt. It's ridiculous. You know, it's just too bad that we just can't let go. You know, we had an agreement with Mr. Benjamin, and now he's appealing his thing that he won and we agreed to. So I'm just really beside myself. I usually don't get this angry at the podium, but let me tell you, I am really angry tonight because we had an agreement. And let me tell you, as a coach that I've coached little kids, I do not like people when they go back on their words or they lie. And this is exactly what happened tonight. So I'm really upset.
Thank you for your comments. Councilmember Kowalczyk, Alfano.
I think it goes without saying, I have the same feelings as both of the Vice Mayor and Councilmember Partridge have expressed. I mean, I've sat down in your living rooms and talked to you, and at the end of all of the time and the tour of the ditch in your backyards, I thoroughly understand where you're coming from. And yes, I see you guys as neighbors. I mean, that's why I think we've taken the time to meet with you and trying to find a solution. But I made it very clear when we wrapped up, we needed to put Chapter 1 to bed. We needed to put the lawsuit to bed. That has to go away. We're talking about a retroactive CDP, Coastal Development Permit, from 4 years ago. Why would there be appeals on a permit that would have happened 4 years ago? I just don't see the logic here. And as I said to you, that needs to get put to bed, go on. Then we can begin to look at solutions for Kehoe and for Roosevelt. So I'm in agreement with the other two council members. We can't hold the other 13 ditches, waterways, whatever you want to call them, hostage. We have to in agreement with the Coastal Commission's recommendation, get them moving, get them taken care of, and then we have to attack your problem. We need somehow to find a way to stop this cycle of litigation. We will never fix this problem if every time we take any action, there's litigation. It's an endless cycle. It needs to stop. You know exactly where I'm coming from. So we'll do whatever we can to continue to work with you, but I think you all know what the answer is.
Thank you. Councilmember Qualchuk.
Yeah, thank you. This is particularly troubling, and I'm so glad the Vice Mayor and Councilmember Patridge spoke first, because I couldn't have as eloquently captured the history of the situation, but I share the frustration. We want to maintain the stupid ditch. You want us to maintain the stupid ditch. Maybe you can help us get through this logjam, but this is the situation we're dealing with. Our hands are tied. We have to follow a very methodical procedure, and every time there is an appeal, there is another methodical procedure we have to follow, and it is stalled, and it's hurting the community. I don't like it, but I have to abide by it. So I can't be more clear than that. I'm going to approve cleaning the 13, but I want to approve cleaning the 15. And, maybe we can find some other way to get momentum on the other two. And I'll continue to work with the council and our staff to push that forward. But I'm not going to step the 13 because we're pushing against the one. But look, I hear unanimity up here that we want to maintain this ditch. We want to get out there and do what we've done for years, and just get any obstruction out of the way. Maybe you can prevail on that front, because we have to abide by a methodical process by virtue of the circumstances over the last couple of years. So I'm going to approve this.
Thank all of you for your well thought out comments, and for the public's comments also. As our fellow council member stated, this is a very serious thing, and it's more than just cleaning the ditches, as our commenters have stated. It's about how are they going to be able to preserve their property, and how are they going to be able to preserve what is near and dear to them around them. And as a homeowner and a property owner, I mean, there's nothing more important other than family than preserving what is really rightfully yours. And so that's a whole nother plan that, as one of the commenters mentioned, that we will have to go through. But as the council said, we have been through a very ticklish situation on this Kehoe ditch for a number of years, and we all understand the reason why. And there has been some minor mistakes made, very minor, but we've responded to those and paid up accordingly. Personally, on ditches, I mentioned here months ago that as chair of the water board, by June of 14, and staff will take note of this, we have to reduce trash by 40% in this city. And most of the trash is in storm drains or storm ditches. And so I'm encouraging our staff, when we get to move forward with the 13 that we're able to clean, we document how much trash is coming out there, so when it comes back to the water board, we understand that credits are being made on this process, and I think that's very important. But more so, I think from a legal perspective, and the multiple agencies that our staff has met with, I'd like to just ask our city attorney possibly to make a few comments on this. And it has been stated this evening by the appellant that it will be appealed to the Coastal Commission, and that will be a lengthy process, I'm sure, and a costly process. But we have to look at the public's right to do this, and just a little bit of your comments, please, City Attorney, and your expertise in this.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I think if you look at attachment 7 to your staff report, it's a letter from Coastal Commission staff in which Coastal Commission staff suggests that removing Kehoe and Roosevelt Ditch from the project will facilitate a more streamlined review of the appeal that's already been promised. And so that is consistent with our meeting with all of those agencies, Coastal Commission, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, National Marine Fisheries Service, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and California Fish and Wildlife Service, where we discussed the ditch maintenance program. It was explained to us that they believed that that the mitigation measures and the maintenance proposed for the other 13 drainages were appropriate, and they had no concerns with those aspects of the permit. But just given the issues that were raised in the appeal on the Kehoe and Roosevelt drainage, it makes it more likely that they'll make a substantial issue finding, which basically means that it will take a lot longer to process the appeal. They could ask for additional studies. And if you recall our experience with appeals to the Coastal Commission lately, they languish there sometimes for years. Their feeling was at the meeting that if just the 13 drainages are included with the mitigations that have been, I should say, the mitigations that have been set forth in excruciatingly painful detail in the initial study and the mitigated negative declaration. I mean, it's astounding to me how complete they are, that they felt that they could issue a finding of no substantial issue. That doesn't mean that they're bound by that. That specifically is not reiterated in their letter, but that was the indication that we got at the time. So, you know, I think staff views this as a regrettable recommendation and certainly understands the frustration of the residents, but believes that in the interests of the city as a whole and to get some maintenance activities moving on these ditches before we start to get a real significant rainfall year, this is the best we can recommend for tonight's purposes. Hope that answers your question. I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions or comments you have.
Councilmember Kowalczyk to the
Thank
city
you.
attorney.
To the city, thank you, Mayor. To the city attorney, quick question you may or may not know the answer to, but if there were no appeal to the Coastal Commission on this, what is the approximate rough timing when we would be able to perform maintenance on the ditch?
That's true. It would be this spring, so it would occur during the next dry season. The permit becomes effective within 10 days if it's not appealed. We send a notice of final action to the Coastal Commission. They have another 10 days for the Coastal Commission to appeal it. So that's our process.
Okay. Spring.
Correct.
This year.
Yeah, and I should just reiterate that.
Right. Yeah, I understand. I just want to be really clear. If there's no appeal, spring. I mean, that's what we keep saying over and over. Untie our hands a little was my point. Thank you, Tony.
I would just reiterate that as the staff report indicates and has already been pointed out, we could proceed and process another permit for Kehoe and Roosevelt drainages. But given the length of time it's taken to prepare this item and fairly reasonable likelihood that that would be appealed again, it's pretty much assured that the action that is recommended tonight will result in no maintenance being done this dry season. So at the earliest, it would be the summer of 2015.
Thank you for your input. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want everyone to understand how serious we do take this issue. And, you know, if we were king and we could swing our magic wand, we could hopefully resolve this issue. But it is a very complex issue. And it's something that, again, as I stated, we all take it very seriously. But, you know, we have rules and regulations and procedures in California that every individual is entitled to follow. And this individual has decided to take this path. And so we have to ensure that we legally continue to follow what is recommended to us, so we do not get in another lawsuit situation where it will cost the residents of Half Moon Bay hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I also, when we have to make a vote, I have to vote for the betterment of all the community, as hard as that is for me to say to my neighbors and friends. But we do have to clean these ditches. And it's so unfortunate, and I'm not going to beat a dead ditch down, but it's so unfortunate that we could not move forward with this at this time, but we do have to move forward with the other ones. It's simple as that. And so at this time, I would like to say, Vice Mayor, unless you have a comment, Vice Mayor would like to make a comment or a motion?
Sadly, and as John had spoken, for the overall benefit for the rest of the community, I'm making a motion to deny the appeal and affirm the Planning Commission's decision modified to eliminate Kehoe Ditch and the Roosevelt Drainage Ditch, approve a coastal development permit, and adopt a mitigative negative declaration to allow routine maintenance of specified drainage features in the city of Half Moon Bay, subject to the findings of Exhibit A and conditions Exhibit B contained in Attachment 1.
Second.
Been moved in second. Any further comments on the motion? If not, a roll call vote, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, and you understand how difficult these votes are for all of us to make, but I will vote yes. Thank you on this item, and thank all of you for your participation. I believe I'm being requested to take a very, very brief break, 2 to 5 minutes, and try not to engage too much. All right. We will reconvene here in about 7 minutes.